Make sure you get front seat by your TV. Front seat. Water in our country is an extremely precious commodity. But why should we have water problems in a country that squandered $320 billion in 7 years? In 7 years, we spent $320 billion and we have water. And then Manning has the guts to work in communities, shaking hands and kissing babies. I used to have a dog called Rin Tin Tin and Lassie. But a friend told me, don't say anything about the dog tonight because it didn't sound so good. But if I didn't listen to my friend, I'll tell you what Manning should kiss. The dog might vex. Love, my dear friends. Love cannot live here anymore. Tell him so. You must tell him so. Tell Manning so when he comes to Cumuto, Manzan. Tell him, Mr. Manning, you have no love here. That is, of course, if he ever comes, yes. So I ask you, are you ready to take hold of the reins of power? Yes. For 2 years, my friends, for 2 years, the Prime Minister illegally used the nation's crest on his vehicle, even though the Constitution didn't authorize it. For 2 years. It's only last month they passed a bill to, of course, rectify it. For 2 years, he was a lawbreaker. Are you understand? Are you clear? Do you understand why the country is so lawless? Why is it? Why is it, I ask you, the same law that fell heavily on the Drummond Summit in St. James during the Summit of the Americas didn't, of course, answer the question of Mr. Manning's lawlessness. The same riot squad that came out for Abdullah protest against the parliament, why didn't they question Mr. Manning? Why, of course, there's one law for the PNM and another law for everybody else? Why is it, of course, you could have the PNM organizing meetings in Woodford Square, and when you want to protest government policies, they come at you with a heavy hand. In fact, let me tell you something. You remember, you see, I want to tell you that this whole situation we are facing here today is not Mr. Manning alone, you know. We are facing a situation with people even in our own party. As few as they are, they of course are powerful in some ways. You recall a lady called Gita Sakal? Gita Sakal sued our political leader for libel. The case was taken over by a former Attorney General in this party. And what is interesting is that though our political leader has been sued, they never sued the newspapers. If the newspapers publish something that is libelous, how are you going to sue the political leader and not the newspapers? But the aim is to get at the political leader at all costs. You understand also too the attacks made on the chief whip. I am the first African chief whip this party ever had. And if they vex for that, that's a business. The business. Kamla put me there and I go stay right there. She put me there fearlessly. She didn't ask them, she asked me. I said, leader, put me where you want. Yeah? And now I'm saying to you that since that day, all hell break loose. I getting attacks day and night and me answering them. I answering them because they want me to answer them. And say I put X to speak and Y to speak. Every Wednesday, we have meetings, caucus, to discuss who's speaking, when, and on what. And if them don't want to come to caucus, that's a business. Yes. But we in caucus, and we say X and Y must speak. You remember, of course, also, recently, I'm coming to that just now, recently, I had to sue the last leader of the opposition. I went to England, I get an English QC, a fellow called Ronald Twaits, one of the best and brightest, and I said, sue him for me. Sue him, of course, because while during the campaign, you could say I owe 30 million, 40 million, 50 million. I would close my ears to that. When the campaign finished, if you continue that foolishness, I could sue you. So I sue him, right? And I sue him, of course, English silk, top class, you know Jack Warner. I gave him 20 days. And therefore, next week, when I come back from Jerusalem, it's court. So what happened? In the meantime, they get together, the former AG and friends get together, and they come up, of course, now, to sue Jack Warner. For what, boy? Sue Jack Warner for some foolishness. For foolishness. Sue me, of course, because of money they gave for the campaign in 1970. So far, yes, so far. So I said, so go ahead. And therefore, I tell you, is who could sue the most? Who could sue the most? So I tell you tonight, bear in mind, there is a conspiracy at large. Because there are 2 or 3 dissidents in the party who won't accept Kamala. Who won't accept Kamala, who want to undermine. There are those people in the party and in parliament who, when of course Kamala put a motion to go against Manning, they sat down. They sat down and said they didn't hear. Stick breaking their ears. So 9 of we stand up. 9 of we stand up and 2 sit down. And the motion was defeated. Yeah. And I tell you, therefore, you have to live with that. And that's what we're fighting. And they could sue me. They could say who I owe. I know something, that at the end of the day, I could come to you and face you. My hands are clean. Hands are clean. I'll go further to tell you. That, of course, of those 2 sat down, one of them, of course, has several cases. And I used to be Mrs. Pandey's bailer for about 6 years. And then I said, listen, you can't, of course, I can't be a bailer and you cost me every morning. And I said, listen, find a bailer. Right. So they find a bailer. And the same bailer they find is the fellow who sue me. Right? And I tell you something. Here I tell you, it will be a long, hot summer. We go show, of course, who sue who. We go show documents. We go show where it come from. We go show, of course, who get P&M contracts, how they get it, and so on. All this coming out. Right? Because I tell you again, I have nothing to hide. So the newest bailer in town is now, of course, the fellow now who, of course, say he go sue me. And, of course, he has a team of lawyers, all, of course, interlocking. But I tell you, of course, that I don't want to get sidetracked. I'm telling you tonight, that is only the beginning. Don't get sidetracked. Let them do that. Our enemy is the P&M. Our enemy is not among ourselves. If we have a problem among ourselves, we'll couture and so on. We go fix that. But our enemy is the P&M. And I tell you tonight, that love cannot live for this government anymore. You can't have love for this government anymore. Not in Cumuto, Manzan. Not anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago. And you must tell them so. My dear friends, when people come together, when people join together and sing their voices as one accord, as we do tonight and throughout the country, this party, the P&M, can be defeated. Do you remember, of course, the plans they had to buy a private jet for their use? You recall how we spoke against it and so on, and we fight them against this private jet? And of course,